The night was dense, a black mantle carved by unseen hands, as if the beyond itself sought to highlight the lights cutting through the darkness. The cold air from Lake Eller carried the damp scent of algae and wet stone, tinged with the salt dragged inland by the western sea breeze. The flickers on the far shore, coming from the twisted woods, were now constant, following a pattern Caius couldn't decipher. But his father could. Auren answered each sequence with another, engaging in a silent dialogue with whatever lay beyond the waters. Caius stood in awe. He knew his father was a herald of Lume, but had never truly witnessed the weight of that title. His eyes darted between the flashes from Auren's guitar, glowing so near they sparked like embers in his vision, and the replies from across the lake, alternating in short and long pulses, a code woven into the night. The vibrations of the guitars would resonate in the cold air, shaping light like a visible echo. The glow leapt from the strings in dancing sparks, some brief, like falling stars, others sustained, stretching into the air before dissolving into darkness. Each note triggered a flash. The short ones, quick and discreet, sliced through the silence. The long ones, deep and heavy, carried a weight that made the ground beneath Caius' feet subtly tremble. He realized this was more than an exchange of signals. It was a living language, woven in light and sound, a pure melody, a code only the initiated could decipher. Caius blinked, his eyes burning from the flickering brightness trembling before him. The flashes came in distinct rhythms, some like the hurried beat of a drum, others like distant thunder, hesitating before dissolving into the cutting wind that swept across the lake. He noticed the pattern, an unseen logic in the flashes. First, 3 short pulses followed by a single, longer one. A pause, brief as a breath, and then more signals. A combination that shifted with a life of its own, almost hypnotic. Across the lake, in the twisted woods, the lights answered in the same cadence, echoing an invisible melody through the night.
What are they saying?
Caius whispered, his voice hoarse, trying to grasp the hidden meaning within the sparks. Auren kept his eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the lake, his fingers adjusting the flashes on the guitar with surgical precision.
It's them. The boat is hidden. Rope in the tree.
Caius frowned, unable to understand how those words emerged from the dancing lights, but his father read the phrases as if they were etched into the black sky. Auren sent out one final sequence. A brief pulse shimmered, so subtle it felt more like a whisper of light than a flash.
Good friend, leave it to us.
He translated as he plucked the guitar strings. A shiver climbed Caius's spine, the hairs on his neck bristling from both the cold and the mystery. This wasn't a conversation of voices, but a communion woven into the very fabric of night, where Lume spoke, and only the chosen knew how to listen. Auren walked to the edge of the lake, his steps steady now, the red cloak hissing against the wind.
Caius, check that tree. There should be a rope.
Reaching the shore, he raised the guitar and began to play a steady melody, a slow, deep lament full of resonant notes that echoed like an ancient call. The lights now took shape in soft circles falling upon the lake's surface. In answer, ripples formed, spreading across the calm water. The sound of wood creaking under the tension of the strings blended with the whisper of the waves. It was a song of trust, a pulse that seemed to warm the cold air around them. On the western shore of Lake Eller, Kale, Leora, and Epona were camped beneath the same dark sky. Kale had lit a fire, the flames crackling softly, casting dancing shadows across the polished pebbles of the beach. The warmth fought against the damp cold rising from the water, and the two of them sat around it, sharing what little remained in the wicker basket, a piece of hard bread and a few shriveled wild berries. The scent of burning wood mingled with the faint acidic aroma of the lake's bordering algae. They didn't know what to do next. West, the mysterious man had said, but he hadn't mentioned a lake so vast it might as well have been an ocean. Skirting it from the north meant risking a run-in with the black-armored soldiers. To the south, there was only the open sea. Their food was running out, the horizon offered nothing but dark forest and water, and the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on them.
What will we do tomorrow?
Leora asked, lifting her blue eyes to Kale, the firelight reflecting in them like trapped stars.
I'm not sure.
He replied, voice hoarse, recalling Lysara's lessons.
We can hunt in the forest, or try to fish. At least we have fresh water, but we can't stay here forever.
They finished the meal in silence, the crackling fire punctuating their thoughts about the past days, grief still a heavy burden on their shoulders. They settled down for the night, Kale lying on the grass after spreading the torn cloak so that Leora could curl up closer to the fire. Kale's mind wouldn't rest. The past days spun through his thoughts. His parents, the escape, the soldiers, and that beastly power inside him that made him tremble just knowing it was there. At least Leora was with him. Her sweetness always lifted his spirits. He couldn't understand how she could stay so positive after everything, their lives destroyed in an instant, and still no answer as to why. She had manifested something too, back on that hill. What did she mean by, my voice could change everything? His thoughts swirled, a vortex of questions, until something pulled him out of his daze. Leora stood up moments later, her tangled blonde hair falling over her face. A soft melody hovered in the air, draping over the crackle of the fire like a veil of sound. She didn't know where it was coming from and tilted her head, trying to find the source.
The lake? How?
She asked, frowning.
Kale, do you hear that?
He was already on his feet, alert. Eyes narrowed. Lights flickered around them, not from their fire, but farther away, across the lake, and from within the twisted woods. The knife trembled in his hand, ready to defend them. Waves began to ripple across the once still surface of Lake Eller, their gentle crashes against the shore echoing like a rhythmic murmur. Leora stepped closer to the edge, her bare feet sinking into the damp sand, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. Kale pulled her back, his heart racing.
Stay here.
He whispered, uncertain of what it was or what its intentions might be. The waves came and went in a pattern he couldn't grasp, each impact shaping the beach's sand. Leora, unaware, began to move with the music, her arms swaying like leaves in the wind, humming with a clear, beautiful voice that followed the rhythm. Her eyes were closed, lost in the magical moment, the sound rising like a silver thread into the night. When she opened them, she froze in awe.
Look!
She exclaimed, pointing. Kale followed her gaze, eyes widening. An arrow, clear as daylight, had formed in the sand, lit by the flicker of their fire. It pointed south, toward a cluster of rocks rising taller than them, their rough outlines cutting into the sky. Kale carefully made his way around the stones, knife steady in hand, his body braced to strike. But he didn't need to. Nestled between the rocks, a motionless shape emerged from the shadows. A canoe, small, but just big enough for the two of them. A flicker of hope crossed his lips, the pain from his cut pulsing faintly.
Look, Leora. Someone left this here.
Kale said, pushing the boat out from between the rocks, water already rising to his waist. A worn rune, almost faded, was etched into the wood, a symbol he didn't recognize, yet it pulsed with a strangely familiar echo. Leora let out a joyful cry.
We're saved.
She exclaimed, but her smile quickly faded.
But Epona won't fit in there. What are we going to do?
Kale lowered his head. Epona was an old, loyal friend. She had saved his life. But they had to leave.
We'll have to leave her behind. Leora, don't worry. She knows how to take care of herself.
He said, though his voice trembled. The mare stepped closer as if she understood. She pressed her muzzle to Leora's shoulder, nuzzling her cheek with a warm, gentle farewell. Leora wrapped her arms around her, holding her tightly, full of silent gratitude.
Take care, girl.
She whispered, a forced smile on her lips, tears running down her face. Kale said his goodbye with gentle pats to her face, resting his forehead on her strong shoulder with a look of gratitude. Epona didn't hesitate, her mission was complete. With a long neigh, she turned and trotted toward the twisted woods, her white and gold mane shimmering under the stars.
Let's gather everything. We need to put this lake between us and the soldiers as soon as possible.
Kale said, throwing sand over the fire, the hiss of dying embers rising into the air. They climbed into the canoe, and Kale grabbed the oars, dipping them into the water with a soft splash. Auren's melody still echoed in the distance, calm and steady, the waves gaining strength as if pulled by it. The boat began to glide, almost effortlessly, the current drawing them toward the center of the lake. For a moment, they looked up in awe, the starry night mirrored across the water like an infinite glass, the silence broken only by the creaking of wood. Leora hummed softly, singing along to the distant tune. On the far shore, Caius returned from the tree, the rough rope in his hands, his sweaty face glowing under the light of the guitar.
Found it, father.
He shouted, breathless. Auren nodded, his eyes fixed on the water now rippling more intensely.
Pull.
He ordered, Caius obeyed, and the rope groaned, pulling something from the lake. A narrow, swaying rope bridge emerged from the surface, wet planks dripping as it stretched toward a small island in the lake. Auren played one final lament, deep and urgent, the notes rumbling like distant thunder and creating a bright burst of light. The light in the twisted woods flashed once, and vanished. Kale felt the boat shudder, the waves crashing harder against the wood.
Leora, hold on,
he said, as the oars became nearly useless against the current pulling them forward. On the horizon, a silhouette of land began to take shape, and the lights from Auren's guitar sliced through the night, now much closer. The sound of the laments swelled, merging with Leora's gentle humming, a pure melody flowing from her like a river, and the lake responded, the waters roaring with a primal echo Kale felt in his very bones.